How Mitakuyepi. Hello everyone. Since it is October, the Halloween month, I would like to tell some stories that kinda have that Halloween flavor. In the Lakota way, we do not have Halloween, but there are stories that could fit that kind of thing. And here's one of them.
Every family usually has a white owl story, something that happened to their relative. Some of them are recent stories, some of them are very ancient stories. They are stories that are scary, yeah. This story involves a woman who lived alone in a house that was on a hill just outside of town. It wasn't too far away from the town. You could see the town. It was just right there. It was just like, I don't know, maybe a quarter of a mile outside of town, half a kilometer. It really wasn't that far. It was on the hill so she could see in town. This happened in the 1960s. And in those days, there were not that many streetlights. The only streetlights that there really were on the main street. This was a town of about 500 people. And the only paved road was the main street where all the stores were. And the other streets were gravel roads. But they didn't all have streetlights. So the only lights you could see were the lights of the house. If the house had an outside light, then that's what you used, yeah? But on her house, she had a utility pole, so there was a light outside her house because it was out of town, basically. And so she could see at least half of the way walking into town. And she lived alone in this house. And she's kind of a wild woman, yeah? She likes to get drunk and be with different men and so forth. And so this one night, it was autumn, by the way. No snow, a little bit chilly. But she wanted to go into town and get drunk at the local bar and hook up with a man and do that kind of thing. So she got a flashlight so she could use it part of the way because there was no moonlight on this evening. Wherever it's going to be dark, it's going to be really dark. And she didn't want to step on any snakes or anything like that, so she took a flashlight. So she was starting to walk into town, and when she got into the dark area, she heard something behind her, like wings flapping. And then it went over her head, and then suddenly it landed in front of her. So it was standing on the ground. So she shined a flashlight on it, and here it was a white owl. And started to scream at her. And it scared the hell out of her. But at the same time, when you're from the country, or you come from a small town like this, white owls, when they scream, it sounds like a baby screaming. So if you don't know that, that's going to really freak you out. Yeah, it's going to really scare you. So she heard it scream. It surprised her because it happened really quick. And she tried to shoo it away, but it just stood there. Then she picked up some rocks and she started to throw it at this bird, but it wouldn't do anything. And then she was going to just walk over it. And here, as she got closer, it started to grow. And pretty soon it was taller than her. Every time she said something, it mimicked her. It would imitate her voice, and it would say the same thing back to her. And that's when she got scared. And as it grew, she turned around and ran back to her house, and she could hear it flapping. It was chasing her. It scared her, and she became a believer. Yeah, so she turned around and ran back to her house, locked up her doors, and turned on all the lamps. And the owl was sitting on top of that utility pole. Yeah, it was just sitting up there. And she stayed up the whole night because she was scared. And it sat up there until the sun came up. Then it flew away. And then that morning she walked into town and she went to her sisters and told her everything that happened. The sister told her, see, you better stop your whoring and drinking ways. So this lady just laid down and went to sleep in her sister's house. And her sister went to work. So the lady woke up in the early evening and she decided to go to the bar Her sister wasn't home, but she went to go to the bar anyway, and she started to get drunk, and then she ended up with a man that night, and they got in his car and they drove south of town, and he lost control of the car, and the car spun and flipped several times. Nobody was wearing seat belts, so they got thrown from the car and were smashed. The car landed on top of the lady, and that was it. She was dead. So, this is why lots of people think that when you see a white owl that you're going to die. Yikes. No, I'm going to explain this so you can have a little bit more insight. Yeah? Like I said, a lot of people who don't know cultural information, even Lakota people, Lakota people, when they hear these kind of stories today, they think that when you see a white owl that it's a harbinger of doom, that it means your life is over. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. First of all, owls represent wisdom. Owls in general represent wisdom. And there's a lot of stories where the owl would say something wise. It would change the whole outcome of a story in a really good way. I was just thinking of this one called The Race Around the Black Kilt. I told that story several times, and I will again in the future. And an owl makes all the difference in the world in this story. So the owl is known for wisdom. And the white owl is known for warning. Our original tradition is that if one flies in front of you, I mean, not way out there 2 miles away. No, I don't mean that. I mean right in front of you. This is the signal for you to stop. Whatever you're doing, you stop. Turn around and go back to where you came from. Wherever it is. Keep going until it's a safe place. So if you just came from the store, go back further. Where were you before the store? Do you see what I mean? You keep going back until you arrive at a safe place. So you backtrack. Even if it's leading you back to home, you backtrack. And then you're supposed to burn some sage and smudge yourself with the smoke. And then you think, what's going on in your life right now? What is going on? You think of everything that's happening. Whoever is in your life, you think about your connection to them. You think about what is the current standing between you and them. You really take the time to think about this and you pray. And then you'll soon find out what's wrong. There is something wrong. And then you have to do your part to remedy that situation. And even if the other person doesn't want to make peace, at least you've done your part, and that's all that matters in this situation. That you took responsibility to make the attempt on your side, and you did your part, and that's all you can do. If the other person doesn't want to do anything to remedy the situation, it's not your fault. Now, think about that. Was that a bad thing? No, it wasn't. This white owl was warning you because it cares for you. It knows that if you continue living the way you are living, it knows that disaster is coming because the white owls can see into your future. So they know when something disastrous is coming to you. So they want you to change your thought patterns and fix or nurture whatever is broken. And this changes your thought patterns. And then that thing that was going to kill you or lead to your death, it's gone now. So the white owl is actually protecting you. It's warning you because it cares for you. And this is so catastrophic that it has to get your attention in such a way as to make you think. Hence, in this story, this one, it grew bigger. Yeah, it imitated her voice. It was trying to get her to go back and rethink something. Otherwise, something really bad is going to happen if she doesn't do that. And in this story, she didn't follow it. The owl was trying to protect her. The owl was trying to get her to change her life, but she didn't listen. And sure enough, she ended up dead. So no, the owl did not bring death. She brought her own death. So she didn't follow the instruction. Even her sister tried to warn her. This is a true story, by the way. So these are really serious things. So when you think about it, yeah, it was scarier than hell, but when you really think about it, when you know this information, you see that it's a compassionate story. The owl is trying to save her life. The owl is trying to get the woman to save her own life. She didn't follow through, so she ended up dying. She brought it herself. The owl did not bring it, she brought it herself. That's the original understanding. But today, Indians see the white owl as a bad thing. Yeah? And it's sad that that's the way Indians are today. So how did we lose that? How did we lose our way of thinking? How did we go from regarding the white owl as something that's warning you, that's trying to help you to save yourself? How did we go from that perspective to the one of perceiving the owl as bringing death? See, we changed. Anciently, we saw the owl as a good sign, that it's warning you. It wants you to live. But now, when Indians look at these things, they interpret the white owl as a symbol of death. How did we change from that? From a healthy view to one of doom and gloom. This is what happened. Back in the late 1800s, when we were placed on reservations, they were prison camps in the beginning. And this is a situation where we couldn't leave. We were not allowed to hunt. Our knives and guns were taken from us. And we were only allowed to eat whatever the American government gave to us, which was really no good food. The quality of the food was okay when it left places like Chicago and stuff like that. But once it got to some of these train stations between there and the reservation, a lot of these handlers would sell it. And then they would buy old food and put that in there instead, and these middlemen would make a lot of money. So what we got on a reservation was bullshit food. It was really no good. And we ended up getting all kinds of diseases like heart diseases, hypertension, diabetes, things like that. And then at the same time, our language and ceremonies were declared illegal by the United States. So we were hit physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Soon after that, our minds became weak. These are the four parts of the self. So with the four parts of the self being sick, we lost our connection to our sacred center. So we started to focus on communicating away from that. And then the priests came from the various churches, and they learned our ways and said that since our ways conflict with the Bible, that our ways are evil, that they come from Satan. They come from the devil. So in our weakened states, we slowly began to accept that. Now, another thing is that there were some Lakota people that didn't want to accept that. They wanted to hang on to the traditional Lakota Star Knowledge ways. And if they revolted, they were sent to a mental hospital in Canton, South Dakota, which was set up for all reluctant Indians in America that did not want to become Christianized. They were sent there. And these church priests also committed the medicine men, medicine women, holy men, holy women. They committed all of them to these mental asylums too. This way, the people would not go to them for help, that they would come to the churches. They wanted the Indian people to only go to the priests and not their traditional healers. So they sent the healers to this mental asylum to die. And if you are radical, you were sent there to die too. So while this is happening, the priests are saying to the Indian people, if you believe our way, we will help your children. And so it was a very, very dire straits time. And so a lot of Indians became Christians because of that. Like I said, we were weak-minded too at that point. And those who stuck it out, there were people who refused to accept Christianity, but they went to church anyway. What they were doing was they were putting up a candy store front. On the outside, they were acting like good little Christian Indians, but on the inside they weren't. They were Star Knowledge people. They did this because they didn't want to get sent to that mental asylum to die. That's sad, isn't it? But that's part of what happened back then. And it's because of these people who maintained this knowledge in secret. Thanks to them, they passed it down to certain people, like me, and we still have this knowledge. And I'm sharing it with you. Because this regards the sacred center. And we all have that. This is not a Lakota thing. This is a Ikje Oyate thing. Ikje Oyate means human being. When you live this way, you communicate as a human, not as a Lakota, not as a German, or a Japanese, or an African. You communicate as a human. That's really important to know. So, that's how it was back then. Now remember I said that the priest said to the Indians, we will help your children. So, they took the children away from the parents, sent them to boarding school hundreds of miles away, where these children were tortured to speak only English and learn the civilized Christian way. If they spoke about home, they were tortured. These schools didn't do background checks in those days. The pay was really low. So they got really no good teachers in these schools. A lot of these teachers were sadistic. They got sexual pleasure from torturing people. And here, this is like summer holiday camp for them. And the same thing for perverts. A lot of perverts now had their pick of the litter. And they could get away with it. That's what happened. A lot of these children were murdered. They were killed. They were raped. They were molested. And there's a lot of unmarked graves near these schools. Not all these children are accounted for. So, those who made it through, what they learned was whatever they saw. Because a lot of these children never went back home. They were told by the priests that their families had died and that there was nobody there. And that broke their hearts. This is why some of these children, they were so sad they couldn't eat. And they ended up starving themselves to death. And those who made it through, like I said, they didn't really survive because they were not able to process all these emotional traumas that they experienced. They didn't know how. because the only adults that were around them were these unhealthy, abusive people. Teachers, dorm matrons, cooks, janitors, priests. They were all unhealthy to them. That's all they knew. They learned how to become victims, and they learned how to become abusers to those who they considered weaker than themselves. So they didn't really survive. A lot of these children that made it through these schools, they had a lot of traumas that they didn't know how to deal with, because all they saw was abuse. That's what they learned. There was no adult healthy role models to emulate. And remember I said these children were told that their families were all dead, so they didn't go back during summer holiday. They just stayed at these schools and worked. So when they left these schools, they tried to live in mainstream America. Nobody accepted them. They would say, you're a heathen. You're a dirty Indian. So they couldn't even get jobs off the reservation. And when they went back to the reservation, to their people, they ran into more problems. Many, many times they were not even accepted by their own people, because their own people were saying, you're too white. You act like a white man. So they're caught in between. So a lot of them turned to alcohol to try to hide all of it, to try to forget everything. They turned to alcohol, and then later drugs. There were some who tried to make it. They married each other because they knew each other went through the same thing. And they didn't want their children to go through what they went through. So they didn't teach them the language. They didn't teach them the culture. Those children, the children of these first generation boarding school people, those children are today's elders. When they were born, they didn't learn the language. They didn't learn Lakota Star Knowledge. They never got the opportunity to. When you look at an old person on the reservation today, they're not the connection to the ancient past. No, they were born in a Christian background at a time when the reservations were strongly Christian. So this is what happened. That's a native experience that a lot of people don't realize. This is what happened all over America and Canada too. So the next generation, they are sent to boarding school too. No choice. It's a little bit better, but they're still abused. They're still getting treated really no good. And so they grow up, have children, and they don't teach their children anything. What can they teach them? They don't know anything concerning their own language. This is why today most people cannot speak their own language, and what little cultural information they know is Christianized, meaning it's dualistic, and it's not the original ancient form. Okay, so the first generation of Indian kids that were sent to boarding school, since all around them were unhealthy adults who did nothing but abuse them, they didn't receive healthy parenting. They missed things that they should have learned about life. So they're lacking emotional development. So when they grow up, and those who make it through these boarding schools, and then they have children, those children are also lacking that emotional support, that emotional development, because the parents don't know how to do it. All they knew and all they learned was abuse. All they experienced in these schools was abuse. So they have a hard time trying to be a healthy parent. So they do the best that they can. But the children still are not receiving the proper emotional development, the experiences that healthy children should receive from healthy parents. They're still missing that. And so when that second generation grows up, they know even less concerning healthy parenting. And so their children receive even less. And every time this happens, the next generation becomes more dualistic than the previous one. So let me try to say that again. The first generation boarding school kids, they didn't receive proper parenting skills. So when they have children, their children are not receiving healthy training that they should be receiving. They're receiving even less than their parents. Now that second generation, when they grow up, see, they know even less. So when they have children, those children are receiving even less, and it gets worse with each generation, which also means that the less healthy emotional development they receive, the more dualistic they become. So with each generation is more becoming emotionally underdeveloped, they're also becoming more dualistic. So today, it's a huge mess on the reservation. As a whole, we're incredibly underdeveloped emotionally, and we are incredibly dualistic. We're quick to attack each other. We're quick to pull each other down. We're just like the rest of the civilized, dualistic world. Notice I didn't say white man, because this is all over the world. It's not just among white countries. It's all over the world. Wherever there is a dualistic ideology, where one gender is considered less than and property of the other gender, you're going to have incredibly underdeveloped emotional people, which equals incredibly dualistic people. And that is unhealthy. So that started by the time of the late 1800s on the reservation. And we are still feeling the effects of that. And that's how we changed. Yeah, we changed our perspective to a Christianized perspective and a dualistic perspective. So now most Indians today categorize things in good and evil, just like everybody else in the dualistic world does. So this is why most Indians, when they hear a white owl story, they regard it as bad luck, when really it's not. It's to get you to change your life for the healthier. Life is just what you make of it. No matter what circumstances you're faced with, it's up to you how you're going to deal with that. So it's really important to have a healthy foundation so you know how to get through these kind of experiences. And that's why this show exists, to help you with that, to influence you with that, I should say.
To learn more about Lakota spirituality, I have written a book called Wichocha Otechige. This book also includes Lakota Star Knowledge information. All the videos that I make, which are about Lakota spirituality, Lakota Star Knowledge, and cultural information, are based on this book. This book costs 99 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost. And to learn more about Lakota language, I have written a Lakota language book called Chante Etanha Owoglake, Speaking from the Heart. And all my Lakota language videos are based on this book. This book costs 119 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost. And new for 2024, I have a new book titled Chekia, which means pray. This book includes a CD which has traditional Lakota prayers and traditional spiritual songs. This book cost 57 American dollars, and this price includes the shipping cost. I also teach online, and I give spiritual consultations as well. If you are interested in any of my services and products, you can send payment via PayPal to my email address, which is info@wolakota7.com. You can see the email address on the screen, and it's also in the video description below. When you send your payment, please include your shipping address and your email address. I do have a Patreon account, and you can see the link to that in the description below the video. Here you can also make donations to my channel, and you can also buy my products, my books, and my services concerning private Lakota language lessons and spiritual consultation or spiritual instruction. Again, you can see the Patreon link in the video description below. Ha, lila pilamayelo. Thank you very much. In the Lakota way, everything is circular. As a result, we do not have a word for goodbye in the Lakota language. And so instead we say until next time, which in Lakota is Doksha Ake. And I will catch you in the next video.